Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the top 5 stories from Southern California's Observer Group newspapers to find out what's really going on behind the headlines.
See, this isn't just going to be a news roundup. We're going to connect the dots between stories that might seem totally separate. New economic data, a political fight in D.C., to see what bigger story they're actually telling us, together.
We'll break it down through 4 main ideas. First, we'll face some hard data on systemic inequities. Then, we're going to flip to the inspiring side of things with community power and resilience. After that, we'll zoom out to a national fight for transparency. And finally, we'll bring it all back home and talk about the role you can play in this story.
Okay, let's dive into our first theme. When we look at 2 huge stories from this week side by side, a picture starts to emerge of some really deep systemic challenges happening right here in California.
It all starts with just one number, 60 cents. Now, on its own, what is that? But when you see what it represents, wow, the context here is absolutely staggering.
So that number comes from a new report by the California Black Women's Collective Empowerment Institute, and what it shows is that for every single dollar paid to a white man in California, black women earn just 60 cents. Think about that. At the rate we're going, that gap won't close until the year 2121. That's almost 100 years from now.
And this goes way beyond just wages. Get this, 1 in 4 black women and girls in California live below the federal poverty line. That is double the rate for white women in the state. Double.
LA County Supervisor Holly J. Mitchell really puts a voice to these numbers. She says this isn't about individual struggles. It's the result of, quote, failed systems that frankly were never truly designed to meet our needs.
And, these systemic issues don't just stop with paychecks. They show up in our education system, too. There's this tool called the California School Dashboard, and it basically helps us see exactly where things are breaking down.
And what the latest dashboard data shows is pretty stark. California's black students are consistently scoring the lowest among major racial groups. Now, yeah, there are tiny signs of progress, a couple of percentage points moving up, but educators are being really clear. It is simply not enough. The system is still fundamentally failing these students.
But listen, that is not the whole story. Not even close. Because for every one of those challenges, there's this incredible story of leadership and action. And that brings us right into our second theme, community resilience.
The report lays out this really fascinating contrast, right? On one side, you have all these massive hurdles, the pay gap, housing instability, health disparities. But on the other side, you see incredible leadership, like having the highest voter turnout and just huge levels of civic engagement.
And this quote from Dr. Shakari Byerly just hits the nail on the head. She calls black women net contributors because they're the ones providing the social safety net that other institutions are failing to. It's this powerful story of propping up the very systems that are letting them down.
And we see that same proactive attitude in education. Black educators aren't just pointing out what's broken. They have a clear, unified plan for how to fix it. They're demanding rigorous instruction, real accountability for school leaders, and a single statewide strategy to finally close that gap.
And this resilience, it also shows up in smaller, everyday ways. A new sports basement opened in Hawthorne recently. And it wasn't just some retail event. It became a real community gathering, bringing out neighbors and leaders like Congresswoman Maxine Waters. It turned a simple store opening into a celebration.
Now, this whole idea of communities demanding accountability from systems that are failing them, it's not just a local thing. So let's zoom way out to a national story that blows this theme up onto a much bigger, much more complicated stage.
The fight over the Jeffrey Epstein files has become a huge political flashpoint. But this is about so much more than just one person's horrific crimes. It's morphed into this massive firestorm about power, about secrecy, and about who gets to be shielded from the public eye.
From one perspective, you have Democrats like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. He's framing the whole thing as a partisan move by Republicans to protect Donald Trump and hide information that he says the American people want to see.
But, and this is where it gets really complicated, it is not that simple. Because then you have Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are openly criticizing Trump, accusing him of, quote, tearing apart his own movement by not releasing the files. So the pressure is clearly coming from all sides, and it's creating these deep fractures inside the parties themselves.
So you might be asking, how in the world were powerful names kept out of these documents? Well, it comes down to a really important procedural detail. An FBI review team used privacy exemptions to black out Trump's name and others, arguing he was a private citizen when the investigation started.
So, where does that leave us?
This brings us to our final section. After looking at these giant, complex systems, from economic inequality to political secrecy, what does any of this have to do with you? What can you actually do?
While changing the entire system takes time, two programs highlighted this week offer a really clear answer for right now. They're about direct, tangible help that empowers people to deal with issues of financial stability and personal safety.
And taking action can be unbelievably simple. Seriously, take the Check to Protect campaign. You can find out if your car has a dangerous, unrepaired recall in, like, 30 seconds. You just go to the website, pop in your license plate, and if there's an issue, you can get it fixed for free. It's a direct, easy way to keep your family safe.
And then there's this number. For a lot of people, this is an absolute game changer. It's the new expanded income limit for the Calassist Mortgage Fund in LA County. This means thousands more families hit by recent disasters can now qualify for up to $20,000 in grants to help with their mortgage.
And all this really brings us to our final question. When you pull it all together, from the incredible community leadership of Black women to grassroots safety campaigns, you see people stepping up everywhere. It really makes you wonder, when the systems we count on fail us, who is actually responsible for building the bridge to a better future?